What's all this? Where is our music? We need some background music for today. What in the world am I doing? Fake streamer! There we go. Howdy, Xavier. Good to see you in the chat. You missed the game's 2nd anniversary. Yeah, life happened. I wasn't able to stream yesterday. It is what it is, but I was able to do it today. I'm Messmer. You are, John. We're all Messmer. You know, deep down, really, there's a little Messmer in all of us. It feels so weird playing this game at normal speed. So how we doing, everybody? Today, it's gonna be some Elden Ring because... Oh my god. Liurnia weather! Why are you like this? Just be normal. It's raining, it's fogging, it's absolute shit here. Who would want to move? The real estate prices must be in the absolute gutter. I'm a lizard? No, you're Messmer. You are definitely Messmer, I am, because we made sure to make all your kind extinct. No lizards around here. God, chat, it's so slow when you're not at ×5 speed. Where's my 500% animation movement? Oh, good to know. Congratulations on 1,000 subs. Well, thank you. Yeah. So yeah, because we've hit 1,000 subs today, I wanted to actually put out some YouTube content that might actually be worthwhile for you all, instead of just me streaming for screenshots and stuff. So I want us to talk about like the DLC and what we could potentially see actually in it. So last time I was mostly just observing things and trying to add clarification and clarity regarding what the information we had at the time. Now I really want to kind of go in and start like speculating what I think it's all gonna mean for the content of the game. Gotta just a normal speed for the DLC. Yeah, it's gonna be so weird me being like, ah yes, I have to go from that side of the map to the other. Let us do it on my horse. It'll take us like 15 minutes instead of like 5 or 3. The weather here is just like that Liurnia weather. Is that so, Darcy? Well, my condolences. John Mesmerovich! Hey, Aerodynamism, good to see you. Woo! Liurnia my ass. Yeah, I wish I could put it in my ass and put it behind me. But nope, this is one of my favorite areas in the game still. Unfortunate. But yeah, so we're going to be talking a bit about the DLC now, chat. Now, I actually have a few thoughts since we were having that last stream. Last 2 streams, technically, but you know what I mean. Someone knows that you can see the snakes directly coming out of Messmer's body. Do they come directly out of his body, or are they just, like, you know, under his cloak and stuff? Because there's a big difference. Anyway, either way, I have some thoughts, chat. First, I want to clarify some things I missed on that stream. One, I didn't notice that when we were at the Miquella cutscene at the end, the curtains, the veils that were, you know, coming from the Shadow Erd tree in the trailer actually disappeared for that very last bit. I didn't notice that part, admittedly. Now, granted, I really should have, because it was such a big part of the DLC in the skybox, and I didn't make note of it, but, you know, neither here nor there. It is worth noting, though, that's probably going to be kind of like the Hunter's Nightmare, where, like, the rain stops raining when we break the curse and stuff, and I think the sun eye representing the curse disappears, too, if I recall correctly, so that's going to be neat. Another thing to pay attention to was the shadow people. Because of the whole stream getting, you know, messed up and us having to do a new stream, I didn't focus on that scene as much as I should have, and I didn't notice that the weapon they were using is the same as the Misbegotten's cleaver, which could be significant lore-wise. It could just be that they're reusing a basic weapon or whatever for these guys, but I can see there being lore implications, especially given everything else. Congrats, Loki. Thanks, Adolphus. Your YouTube is finally growing. I suppose you could say that. Now you can engage in viscous combat with the likes of other up-and-coming YouTubers like Vati or TA. No. No. I'm not getting in the arena with a bunch of other content creators. They can do their own thing. I'll do mine. Live and let live. Loki can think? Yeah, I know. It's very shocker. I actually do apparently have a brain. It's only comprised of like 2 brain cells, but I can rub them together well enough. I told you the weapon was the same. I do not recall this, Xavier. Oh my. Alright, so first things first. Let's talk about the big question of the landmass. So there's going to be this whole Shadow Tree realm thing, and it's talked about how it's physically separated from the lands between. So I've been trying to think about this idea of physically separated, and it's going to sound weird, but there is actually a question of what do they mean by physically? Do they mean in the sense of we can't reach it as part of one continuous landmass, the same as we can with the other stuff in the lands between, you know, barring like Far Missoula or something like that. Also, whoops, that's still there. Yikes. Anyway. Or do they mean physically separated in the sense that they cannot be accessed, they cannot be, like, they were part of the same landmass, but then, like, they were physically removed in that sense. Because there's 2 ways to think about it. Either A, the physically refers to the idea that they both physically exist, but in different spatial dimensions. So, like, let's say that there was a landmass, like here, right? Far Missoula. And then that got physically separated to be over here, right? It's still sharing, though, the same dimensional space, right? This is all in the same, occupies the same space in that sense. Or could it be like the same scenario, this gets physically separated from this landmass, but let's say Far Missoula went into a nightmare world, Bloodborne. And then that gets put into its own dimensional space where it exists physically separate, but that is due to the, I don't know if you want to call it spiritual per se, but due to an actual change, a separation, and a divide in time and space there. Hey, Pedro, congrats for the 1K. Yeah, thanks. I'm always happy to have congrats from you guys. I appreciate it. Part of the same landmass, methinks, then hidden by that giant veil. So do you think then when the veil disappears, the space would eventually return? I'm not so sure about that. So my thought is, and based on what we see, I think we're still in a dream/spirit world. I still think that is the case. That is my sense of it. Either way, I do think that this idea that it was at least once part of the lands between, but physically separated, opens the idea that there was an existing space that no longer exists here. And if that is the case, I think this area here might be that space. I could totally see, like, the map that we're going to explore is going to have, like, a bunch of pieces of it. Again, because it's supposed to be bigger than Limgrave, right? So let's say it's, like, this big or something like that. I could see huge chunks of this coming from all this side of Altus, right? So, like, there was more here. Now, one thought I had was, we don't have a good idea how movement off the plateau would have existed before the Grand Lift of Dectus, right? We know that people did migrate, but was there, like, how would you say, a slope that existed, like, say, here, in this negative space we got, and that would have acted as, like, an area, so let's say, this is where the Everjail is, right? So it would go something like, okay, you climb down, or you climb up, or whatever, and then you get here. Is that the case? Was there actually, say, a landmass here that we'll see in the DLC, and maybe there's even some, like, segments of the old road or whatever that once existed there, right? And it would be something like, you would come down, like, this way, then go through that underpass, and then there, right? Or was there, say, something similar, but it existed all over here? I have to wonder. Do you see the footsteps in the trailer? Vati pointed out on Twitter. Yeah, I wasn't sure if those were footsteps. I haven't looked too closely at that image because of the angle. But that's an interesting way if that's how they're going to do the guidance thing then. Because then it might be a case of, you have the grace points still, so they're not going to change the checkpoints, but you're not going to have any, like, you're not going to have any of this stuff, right? with the graces like physically pointing you somewhere from the grace point. Instead, it's just going to be like a bunch of Miquella, a string of Miquella footsteps that'll like be marked on your map. So maybe it'll be like, okay, you have like footsteps here, and then footsteps here, or something like that. That could be interesting. Hello, Amen, welcome. Yo. Maybe we travel to the past, lol? No. Miyazaki's already confirmed that that is not the case. We're not going into the past or the future. It's going to be, the events of the DLC and everything we experience is going to be contemporaneous with the main plot of the main game. Foot fetish is a core mechanic of the expansion. Sure, peddler, sure. I wonder if there'll be the big dogs and crows there. We didn't see them in the trailer, but we didn't see a lot of old enemies in the trailer, so it is possible still. It just depends on how much they want to reuse old enemies versus at least reskinning them. And the problem is, I don't think K-Lid or the mountaintops are going to be a focus. We didn't see anything that looked like it'd be snowy in the DLC either, so I just don't see a lot of opportunity for them to include the dogs and the crows. It could still happen, I just don't see, like, an obvious chance to include them. Quaylag has posted on Twitter a picture where snakes come from Messmer's breast. Ooh, good to know, Niwa. Thank you for sharing. I think the place being called Land of Shadow kind of implies that's a separate place like the Badlands or Land of Reeds. But we would have to see how they call it in the JP to compare. The JP uses a similar term to what we see in Lands Between. So the Lands Between could also be translated as the land of the gaps, the interspace, or something like that. But the localization calls it Lands Between, which again works. It's similar to how in Dark Souls 2 we have the things betwixt, and the Japanese there is the same term used for between. Again, this idea of a cave of the gaps, an interspace cave, you know. So the idea that there is a sort of it exists in between. It exists in the space between something. Now, generally, I assume the Lands Between is supposed to be the lands between the Sea of Fog, right? Because there's such an emphasis on the idea of us crossing and going beyond the Sea of Fog to reach the Lands Between. But in the case of the Land of Shadow, or Realm of Shadow, as they also call it in the trailer, I would have to assume that this, like, you know, it's supposed to just denote this dimensional space where all these lands are in shadow because they're in the shadow of the Erd Tree. That would be my understanding. Are we getting naked male foot, though? I have no idea. You'll have to take it up with Miyazaki. I think he prefers his women to have bare souls. Yeah, so I could see us missing pieces of landmass here that were physically separated. Now, another option, of course, is when we're talking about, again, going back to this idea that it's just referring to physical separation in terms of dimensional space, not necessarily that they are using different parts of the landmass that may have once been connected to the Lands Between. It could also be something like, we're going to see spaces where it's going to be like, how do I put it? Altus in the past, for example. Because we see a lot of the landmass where it doesn't have any of the common features we see in the Lands Between today. Like, I don't we see any of the trees looking yellow unless you get really close to the Lands Between, right? Sorry, to the Shadow Tree. I'm pretty sure once you get close to the Shadow Tree, that's when we start seeing trees with yellow leaves again, right? But when we look at the general environment, it's mostly actual greenery. The bushes, the grass, and the larger trees. So all of that, therefore, could possibly tell us that we're going to see spaces which are copies of existing land masses, but in the past, it's going to feel different because they're all going to be mixing together a bunch of different places that aren't necessarily how they would have been arranged in reality. Can the Shadowland be related to where the Golden Star bearing the Elden Beast landed? It could be. Again, this goes also to the point about, the idea that Marika first set foot upon, or as I talked about with the JP text, the Marika descended or came down upon. I've seen one interpretation in the Japanese community is that it's like a UFO descending from outer space, right? It descends, you know, it descends or sets foot upon our world, right? So the idea is that the Newmen, being the aliens of this universe, exist in the cosmos, and then Marika, as one of these aliens, came down, and the Land of Shadow is the first place she set foot upon, quote-unquote, right? The first place she descended to. That doesn't clarify, again, exactly whether it's the physical landmass or we're talking about this separate dimensional landmass we're in. Since, again, it is going to be something where we are going to have to travel through Miquella's arm, apparently. Maybe it's just really like the Hunter's Nightmare. Again, it could be. Unfortunately, it's still too vague to say for sure, because we don't have, obviously, all the context of the DLC yet. I'd rather define it like connection between lands between the rest of the world. We can't go there physically, but it occupies the same world. Again, what do you mean by same world, though? If you mean by the same physical dimension or physical plane with which we currently exist upon, then maybe. But you could also argue, would you argue that the cosmos is in the same world, then? Because then, if we go by, say, to use some Bloodborne terminology, that would be a higher plane. It'd be a different plane of existence. And we would say the same about the spirit world or things of that nature. Also, the fact that it's supposed to be exist in the Erd Tree shadow... There ain't a lot of places to exist in a literal Erd Tree shadow, so the fact that we see a quote-unquote duplicate Erd Tree, but shadowy, tells me that's probably a mirror dimension, or mirror world of some sort. That's not the same physical plane we're on right now. UFO boss fight? No! No UFO boss fight. We don't need this to become some jank sci-fi. Although, I guess technically... Unidentified flying object, that could be a lot of things, I guess. So maybe just give us some, like, eldritch abomination and call that the UFO, and there's our boss fight. I think the ring on Miquella's hand is going to be important for accessing the DLC. Can I look at that ring, actually? Let's go to our cocoon. Do you think the Divine Towers might have something to do with it, considering each one has meteorites at the top, and they all seem to circle a region of the map? Just off the top of my head, thoughts? I think it's possible, but my current understanding is that the Divine Towers were constructed really early in the timeline, relative to most events. Like, definitely pre-Erd Tree, I would say. I could be wrong about that, but that's my current understanding, so... In that case, I don't know how relevant they could be to... Yeah, I don't know how relevant they could be to the goings-on with Marika and her establishing her own empire. Or great ones. The lands between's alter ego. That's a good way to put it, John. Anyway, let's look at this ring. Oh my god! This is why we have a camera, chat. Wouldn't it be cool if we could actually collect this ring as an item in the game? Also, is it just me, or does it kind of almost look like it's got a bunch of open snake mouths? I assume not. I think it's just supposed to be, like, a bunch of branches curled around, or, like, you know, like wooden tree branches or something like that, right? But, you know, it kind of looks like, hey, look, a little snake mouth thing, almost, right? A more edgy Elden Ring. Oh, hey, buddy. How we doing? How are we doing with that Morgott model without the horns? Imagine a planet, but it's its own little dimension. On the same planet can be multiple places that don't connect physically, but they still got influence on each other. No, I can't imagine that period, honestly, Onima. That makes zero sense to me. If you're talking about the idea of, like, continents, then that makes sense. But if we're not talking about the idea that the Land of Shadow is a separate continent that exists on the same planet as the lands between, then I don't know. Also, that also creates some problems with the question of the characters on there. Because you have all these places, landmass, cultures, and cities related to places that would connect to the lands between proper, but they're physically separate. Yeah. The ring is probably created by Moog, so the design might not be intended to have snakes. Yeah, I could see Moog actually using it. Do we have any pictures of Miquella that could show whether or not he has the ring on his hands? I don't think so, right? I think the only one we got is that teaser art, so... Yeah, I could see that being just a marriage ring that Moog put on him. Perhaps the ring will be a key item? It could be. The thing with, the thing is that we don't have, like, proper rings in this game. We have talismans. But I could totally see Miyazaki adding the ring as a quote-unquote talisman and then make it like a Dark Souls reference as well. It's like a magic ring that Miquella would always wear or something. But again, this assumes that it's not like, say, again, something like Moog would put on him. I think that occupying the same world is a valid idea since a different land, again, like the Land of Reeds or Badlands, something like continents, yeah. Yeah, if we're going with continents, then okay, I can understand the concept then. I don't know about the idea, though, that the Land in Shadow is just a separate continent, however. Especially if it's supposed to be a continent that exists outside the lands between the Sea of Fog's vicinity. Since you have the dev cam, can you check where the broken path by Miquella would lead to if the bridge was still intact? It just leads to where we would go with the Night Sacred Ground. I've looked at this before, but sure, Night Scout. It would go basically... Oh, whoopsie. Let me go there physically first. When you actually look at it from Night Sacred Ground, it's like goes here. So the idea was you had these highways and things. And they'd have their own little, like, roads and stuff. Now I'm curious how we go from, like, up here. And it's like, okay, yeah, let's go descend all the way down here. So we have normal road down here. But then also the normal road would have to then somehow, somewhere, snake around and go back up to connect to these ruins here. So just a little bit of creative imagination. Maybe the ancient dynasty liked going up and down. They enjoyed climbing their steps. It'd be weird for the Erd Tree to be born outside the lands between. I assume you mean in a physical sense. Yeah, again, that does give me... Again, the fact that the idea is you'd have two separate land masses, and one has a quote-unquote shadow tree, which is supposed to be directly connected to the Erd Tree, but it's a physically separate entity, rather than being, say, part of some spiritual higher dimension that you could argue overlay and are, like, reflections of each other. I feel like that's the more, like, viable concept. There's a cool theory that the ships in the blue field are Numen ships. Ah, I see. So the idea that when you go to that field with all the glowing blue flowers, it would just be a bunch of actual, like, ships, but they were, like, kind of like spaceships, essentially. Like, magical spaceships. Miquella's ring gives you the ninja flip easy. He was a very young and spry boy, and his eternal youth allowed him to do crazy tricks. That'd be funny. I'm just curious if there's a real bridge or platform on the other side of the gap it'd lead to. Yeah, there is. I remember when the free cam was so slow, LOL. Was the free cam so slow? Oh yeah, you know, when I don't press the fast forward, yeah. Then I figured out how to do this. And it works. Yeah, literally Numen spaceships. Yeah, that's a cool... I like that as an idea. Again, it also creates an interesting idea for Marika's backstory then, because if she came... Again, going back to that Japanese theory, if she physically came from the cosmos, it brings into question Numen culture. And, like, if they've come from, like, this special land that exists in the, you know, higher planes in the sky, then... how is it that she's so ignorant about matters related to order and things when she comes down to become a god? Like, that opens up some interesting questions about her early life and stuff. Her relation with Malekith, too, and being her half-brother. Or rather, her stepbrother, I should say. Yeah, they even kind of look like those on the Shifra monuments. I assume we're talking about these types of monuments, right? Let's see. Ships. Again, I assume these things are taken from there we go. Stock images, but we'll see. Yeah, these kind of do have a similar thing to them. We'll have to see in total, because I don't recognize that, the little, like, snake head thing at the top. But yeah, I could see it. Similar, like, flat end, and kind of, like, similar square shaped. Need me Helfin lore in the DLC. Yeah, I could see this being... Again, I still think that this is going to give us some huge drops on Spirit World and Helfin and stuff. That's where I'm leaning. Yeah, the obelisk that we were just looking at. Would the Numen be Space Imperialists? Space Imperialists implies that they're... the idea with the Space Imperialists would imply that they are trying to spread Numen culture for the good of mankind. What we see from the Numen, at least in their current existence, is that either A, they come down there so they can become the god that controls the quote-unquote world, or at least the lands between. Or they become, they want to desperately go back to their own, I guess, land, their own homeland. Their world in the stars. So it's like, I don't know. It sounds more like they're stranded, if you ask me. Like they're, shipwrecked almost. This is mesmerizing. Hey, Chosen Undead. Yeah, we're all Messmer, really. It's all mesmerizing. You're mesmerizing! Someone edit that clip of Keanu Reeves. Something similar to the lecture hall. Part of the plateau physically shifted to a dream dimension, but also merging with reproduction of objects that are still on the mortal plane, e.g., the shadow tree. Yes, that would be where I would like more or less like fall for what we're gonna see with the Land of Shadow. I think it's gonna be something where like it's its own dimensional space. It possibly has actual physical places that once existed here on the surface, but those places were essentially warped into this dream dimension. And it may or may not have simulated recreations of places in the past. So those are all the possibilities I think of that could like come together into the cohesive whole of this map. Now, how much of any one of those, assuming any, is actually going to go in there, I don't know. I don't think we have enough information to really make a solid determination there. Is Messmer mesmerizing? Everything is mesmerizing except the actual Messmer. He's just kind of okay. It's all one big Naruto reference. How much overlap is there between the Ul animal murals and the animal murals of Farum Azula? I don't recall seeing anything that really overlaps, right? Like, we don't see anything quite like this, right? The closest I could think of is with the birds, but it's very different from this. We don't really see any, like, ox imagery. Again, I think these are mostly just probably stock images, if I had to assume. I don't know if anyone's confirmed that yet, but like I could easily see this being like some Mesopotamian stock image on some random wall at a temple or something. We have some people here, again, the boat things. This kind of looks like it probably came from like a Christian cathedral or something. You have this. This kind of reminds me of the Mayan calendar, though obviously with lots of differences. So yeah, I don't see a lot of stuff that I've been like, oh, I've seen that on Farum Azula before. Yes, he has steak boobs, Snoop. Kind of shame if you access DLC by touching the hand. I'd hope that the back area behind the arena would have turned. Yeah, the DLC, Miyazaki in interviews I think also mentions it, but definitely the way the DLC presents it, they outright say, yeah, touch the hand to go to the Land of Shadow, right? Like, it's clearly somewhat outside the DLC. Some people pointed out, the woman who appears, or at least what seems to be a woman, outside the DLC arena, right? Like, it does the whole thing with, like, yes, we will only show the feet, or whatever, right? But it's very clearly indicating we're going to meet an NPC who we can talk to, and she's going to be our tutorial telling us, hey, go touch that hand, and you'll be able to enter the DLC area, and go do the Miquella storyline. And then we're going to touch it, some weird cutscene's probably going to play, we're going to then go immediately into the new dream dimension, or whatever it is, and then when we enter the Land of Shadow, I guess we're going to do like what we do with every time we have one of these weird transfer stuff, we'll just wander around until we meet another NPC to explain what happened. Do you think Marika hid this land herself? It's where she first landed in the lands between, where the Erd Tree began with many prehistoric cultures and a hidden child of hers. I wonder if she did. So there's several options. There's the Greater Will created this. It's a necessary byproduct for the Erd Tree to exist, so the Erd Tree did it, / the Elden Ring. Or Marika herself physically did so. Now, there's this whole point that Miyazaki makes of there being a hidden meaning to the subtitle, and the only hidden meaning I can think of to the Shadow of the Erd Tree is that we're going to learn all the dark side about the Erd Tree, its existence, its nature, and stuff like that. So I would have to assume that if Marika's responsible, it's in order to allow the pretty golden veneer of her magic and all her Erd Tree stuff to not be tarnished, quote-unquote, tarnished, by the reality of what that costs. That is seen in the Shadowland. This could also help explain stuff about the Crucible. Because I'm working on Crucible's End right now, but I'm avoiding stuff involving the Newman and the Omen, because I don't want to like step too hard onto that cosmological stuff until this DLC's out. Now I feel like especially vindicated on that because this DLC may very well provide extra data and context regarding the nature of the Erd Tree and what exactly happened to cause the Crucible to not exist as long as Marika would have wanted. Also, gotta love that the DLC is hidden behind one of the most annoying bosses. Listen, my answer to that is quite simple. Get good, scrub. Use Common Azure. Just use Common Azure, forehead. Get rid of every boss. With how Empyreans have shadows, what if there's a shadow to kill the Erd Tree itself in case the world develops incorrectly? That's an interesting idea, Night Scout. The idea that, just as there are shadow beasts to every Empyrean, or at least presumably every Empyrean, there may be a shadow tree that, acts as a guardian, but also, blade to get rid of the current Erd Tree if it is not, functioning to task. That's an interesting concept. Yeah, Xavier pointed this out. The incantations, there are both the regular, typical golden incantations, but there's also the shadow incantations that the Two Fingers will have us use. And that may tie into the powers of the Shadow Tree. I'm too lazy to make magic build, Loki. I'm too lazy to have Renala just have me respec and then respec back. Black Knife Assassin goes brrr. Elden John better be there. Honestly, I'm surprised we didn't see any Shadow Beasts in the trailer. I would have thought if there's going to be a new Shadow Beast, like Melina or Miquella's Beast or whatever, they would have showed that, or at least like an armor set like we got with like the fake, what's his face? Fake, Blythe, headpiece. So I'm a little surprised they didn't show that. If that does exist in the DLC, that's gonna be quite the unexpected, thing. It's like, oh look, another furry. A Shadow Elden Beast would go hard. I'll be honest, I think it'd be a little lazy if they just took the Elden Beast, reskinned it, and then even if they gave it a new moveset. I kind of hope they get more creative with bosses. Is there any relation between Mohg's Flame and Messmer's Flame? We don't know. Can this be somehow related to the Formless Mother? It could, but again, it's one of those could be. Like, there's a lot of could be's, but we don't have anything to possibly, like, exclude it. It could be related to the Giant's Flame. It could be related to the Shadow Tree directly. There's just a lot of things it could be. Now, if I had to pick one thing, I would say the Shadow Tree, just because I don't see why Messmer would be there, necessarily, unless his flame is, like, sourced from the Shadow Tree and he needs to be nearby it in case he needs to, you know, get more of the source, or it's important to protect the Shadow Tree or something to keep his flame alive or whatever, right? That would be my, like, you know, my gut. But it could be something as simple as, he's been imprisoned there, he was banished there, he's trying to do some other cosmological stuff that's independent of his flame in order to maybe get an upper hand in the Shattering. Because the fact that they have him seated in a throne like the other demigods in Morgoth's Arena has me think that he either wants to be part of the Alliance or he's like a secret member of the Alliance that got like sealed away. Maybe all the other Alliance members were like, no man, that's crazy, we're not gonna accept you, and they all basically agreed to like banish him to the Shadow Realm. I meant Elden Beast duo. Ah, I see. With like a instead of Godskin duo. I hate that even more, then. Is Formless Mother a MILF? I mean, if she's formless, then she can be a MILF. Presumably, she could, you know, be whatever you'd imagine her to be. It could be related to Blasphemous Fire, too. There's just too little to make guesses. Yeah, the problem is there's so many different kinds of fire in this universe. What's one more, right? Like, what is really, like, the opportunity cost of, like, adding another special flame from a unique source of power? Do you got any cut content in mind that Messmer's character might have evolved from? No. Based on what Miyazaki claims, Messmer was already in Martin's mythos. So the character of Messmer, whether or not he went by that name or whatever, because again, we don't know all the specifics there. We know that, for example, from cut content, that Horalu was a name that got passed around. So maybe Godfrey was a name in Marden's mythos, but the idea that Godfrey went by a different name that was called Horalu might have been an addition by Miyazaki when he was like trying to flesh out the text in order to fit everything into, you know, his game world and how he would talk about it with his script. But it could be something similar with Messmer. We might have had an entire character who, whether or not he was called Messmer in that document, was talked about, discussed, maybe even had the backstory explaining why he's in the Shadow Realm and stuff. But Miyazaki couldn't fit the Realm of Shadow into his main story. And he's like, okay, then I thought I can think about ways of including that in a DLC, should that happen. And then once they finally got Elden Ring off the ground and got all the major patches done, they were like, okay, now we can start on making that DLC a reality. What if they had water fire? Honestly, I would actually be okay with that, because since Demon Souls, Miyazaki has not given water its due for its cosmological significance. It really deserves it. We should have water magic. They should do the same thing in Bloodborne. The fact we don't have water magic in Bloodborne is a crying shame. Yeah, like, I could see all of this. It could also explain this tower, too. Because as is, the Divine Tower can only be accessed through the sealed tunnel and stuff. Right? And if there's a missing landmass here that existed to extend the size of Altus, then I could totally see, there being a slope that could have led to the Divine Tower once upon a time. Like, there's just a bunch of little things like this that I could totally see getting fleshed out with the DLC as an additional map to kind of, like, give context to stuff. Now, again, I am sad we didn't see any signs of Langdell, the front side of Langdell there. So if this is a dream dimension and we don't get this front half of Langdell included in there, like, darn. Just darn. He could have fit Miquella in there, but we know he still tried. Yes, we know he still tried, but Miquella is also one of the main demigods who, again, there is stuff regarding Miquella in the base game, right? There is his Halig tree. There is the subplot with Moog. So there's a lot of stuff there. With Messmer, we don't know how much, if any, stuff that Miyazaki tried to work in. Again, one thing I threw out, and I've seen other people throw out, and I find interesting, is the idea that here, next to America's little research lab church for the minor Erd trees, there's that, oh, you can't see the grave, whoops. There's a grave over here where we loot, smoldering butterflies, and maybe that is related to Messmer, and that Messmer is the one who the smoldering butterflies are symbolizing thematically, if not in the, you know, some deeper narrative significance we don't know of yet. Right? So there's this idea that maybe, Messmer's existence in the Land of Shadow has something to do with Marika's research. And maybe she experimented on her son and he died, or she gave birth to him during that point or something or whatever, and then she like transferred him to this other dimension, right? Why did they build Melania's tower in the middle of nowhere? Do they build a new tower every time a demigod is born? Okay, I talked about this before. I think that the towers will predate Marika, and they're just being repurposed to have, like, the two fingers and stuff in them. As to why Melania's tower is isolated, I've talked about this in a Twitter post, but, again, Far Mazula was located here, right? There may have been a river flow allowed to go through it, but basically, this was one giant land bridge that connected the mountaintops to Caelid. This is how the giants were able to move themselves from Caelid up to the mountaintop summit down here, right? Oh, or up here, I guess I should say. This tower was part of that larger landmass, but then after the meteor struck and whatever, and Far Mazula ends up, you know, flying through the sky with the tornadoes and things like that, then this tower got left behind, so now it's isolated. And that originally, again, we know originally this tower had this bridge which connected it, so it would be Divine Bridge, and then there was some sort of thing that would connect it all the way over to here. Hence why we have the Warp Gate, which instead replaces the bridge and has us be able to just instantly warp over there. I think the butterflies might hinge on just what exactly Messmer's flame is. The butterflies seem to be normal flame in the final game with its fire pots. Yeah, that's true. But also, we have the idea of the, what are they called? The young butterflies. that are supposed to be eternally basically in their pupa stage, essentially, despite being butterflies. So those connect to Miquella, but we also see a separate species of butterfly that obviously is like bright white, it shines and glows and all that, and it's very obviously related to Miquella. So, and his powers and how we see him in the trailer, right? He has a similar bright white glow to him. So, like, I don't know if necessarily the butterfly's specific nature is one-to-one to the nature of the demigod. Granted, it is true in the case of Melina, so maybe. Tower must be strong. Yeah, I mean, it's firmly planted in place, I guess you could say. Do you think there's any importance to Messmer using his spear in his left hand? Besides more lefty representation? I don't know. A left-handed boss is going to be interesting to fight against. It could also connect to the idea of the rebus in alchemy, because isn't left hand associated with a bunch of stuff in alchemy as well? And obviously he has the red hair, so like, again, I don't know how accurate that is. Which hand does Radagon hold his hammer in? Does he use his left or his right? I assume we're right by default, but I actually don't know. Yeah, the nascent. That's the word. I keep forgetting the English nascent. Yeah, nascent for Miquella, Aeonian for Melina, but each seems to relate to the curse of the twins. Yes, to the curse, for sure. That is true. But then would you say normal flame would be a curse for Messmer? I guess you could argue that he was cursed with flame powers, and that's, like, obviously a big no-no for Erdtree Society. So that could be the argument, that he has a very close association with flame. Though it doesn't explain why the flame has the shadowy bits. I guess you could argue then maybe that he enhanced his flame powers using the shadow tree as a source, and he's maybe trying to slowly burn the shadow tree to burn the real Erdtree. There's a lot of questions there still, though. Radagon's right-handed, good to know. But his original left arm is gone. Ah, that's true, though! Ooh. But in the trailer, in the original teaser trailer, is he hammering with his right hand or not? Because if he's still hammering with his right hand, I think it's safe to say he's a righty. The Elden Beast has given him a replacement. Yeah, but he gives him a shadow replacement that he does, like, different attacks from, if I recall, right? Is some ring traditionally worn on middle finger of left hand because that's where Messmer wears his? Again, I'm not too familiar with ring symbolism, so I would have no idea. Someone else would have to chime in on that. Right hand in the teaser, but Marika's using her right too. Yeah, then I don't think the right-left thing would be very important then to the dynamics between them. Because I would be thinking, like, maybe if, like, the idea is, like, you know, Radagon was lefty and Marika was righty, then there'd be this idea that they mirror each other and that Messmer is reflecting that, so maybe he's looking for a similar other half to him. Someone also brought up the idea that Messmer is Miquella. I do like the idea that, that Miquella and that Messmer would have, like, his own, like, counterpart, like he is similar to a situation with Radagon and Marika. But again, I don't know how that would work with Miquella specifically, though. Because Miquella already has his Curse of his Eternal Youth, so it seems weird to add on top of that. Oh yeah, he's also, like, he has, like, 2 souls in one or something. Or 2 persons in 1 soul, maybe, would be the better way to describe it. There's also the intro at the beginning of the game where Radagon smacks the Elden Ring. Are we talking about with the shattering aspect? Because that's the only time I remember Radagon ever interacting with the Elden Ring, is when they're doing the whole tussle with Marika over who's in control of the body. Are we going to repair this thing, or are we going to break it? Maybe he's using his left hand because right hand is overrated. I don't know, I think it could just be a random detail to differentiate Messmer from some of the other characters more. But it could also be very important. Because we don't see a lot of left-handed characters in Elden Ring, right? So there may be something special going on there. The opening artwork is what Yobu means, I believe. Oh, you mean in the intro to the game itself. Okay. Not about the trailer intro. Okay. Why is there so much underground stuff in the snowfield, like lightning and these stone pillars? Snowfield. Here. Oh, you mean the, I know what you're talking about. Okay. You mean, like, the trees and things. Because of the river. Now, I've talked about this before, but the rivers that we find underground seem to come from some source beneath the freezing, lake. So you have the one river here, right? And you got all the, typical tree stuff that we see growing there, right? Then we have underground. Now, there's a old alpha version of the map files, which actually shows, so it has, like, the Erd tree here, like it is existing, but if you look at the stuff, it actually has, like, a river flow that goes up all the way to about here-ish, and there's, like, a lake structure there. Also, you can see that's going in the mountaintops, because, like, it goes from, like, this brown color to the white color of the, well, the snow-covered area. So there's this very clear idea that there's an underground river, which all of this water flows from, which also would come from this area where the freezing lake is. And then, obviously, this water comes down, and it splits into the Ainsel and Shifra rivers. So there's the idea that all these rivers where these unique trees are spawning from do, in fact, come from the same source. Now, what's the significance of that? Oh, hell if I know. Maybe all the water fairies are individual rivers, and when they come together, they actually become a singular consciousness that is the quote-unquote water god, right? Like how we have the chaos god and stuff among the otter gods and all that? Maybe. I don't know. That's the best I got for you. Can't climb up here, huh? Come on. Come on. The octopuses here also can't have their tentacles cut off, just like the ones in the river. Oh, you know, that's a good point. Though I still don't know what the significance would that be. Makes sense from, like, a gameplay statement, but in a meta-narrative. But, again, I don't know if there's anything more significant there. Is that oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that was there. I think even if he wasn't both-handed, he would have used them both because to feel to complete. Maybe. Again, we don't know much about Radagon and how he actually fights in proper combat, right? Like, we never see him as a hero. We just see him as man wearing his bathrobe while he tries to repair his wife's fuck-up. That's basically, like, that's the moment frozen in time that Radagon will forever be remembered as. Especially after the boss fight. So it's like, it's impossible to know, like, how much Radagon would use his other hand. Melina doesn't have a right hand, though. She uses a prosthetic. Yes, that's true. She also puts a blade on that prosthetic, though. I wonder what Outer God the Twimber was an envoy of. I mean, based on the association with death, I would assume it's the Outer God of Death. That or some outer god which is very closely aligned with death. I guess that's the question then, if Deathblight might tie into that. But anyway, back to the DLC talk! I forgot about you! This is why I miss good old... You know what? Okay. I'm going to turn on always stealth though, chat. So that way we don't have to worry about enemies like killing us. The Clean Robert Knights use their left hand for their main weapon. Ooh, that's cool. Doesn't the existence of outer god implies the existence of inner gods? Not only Marika, but the serpent of the blue fairy. In my opinion, she is at least. It depends, because outer gods would just refer to the idea that they exist outside of something. So let's assume outer gods refers to the concept that, so far we know the outer gods have some tie to the, they have ties to elements and they have ties to the cosmos, right? So you have the outer god of rot, chaos, etc. So they tie into those types of cosmological concepts, and those can manifest in reality. So although they are outer, they can in fact exist or in some form in this world, even if it's not like they can't have their full presence exist in totality, which is why they need vessels like, say, Melina for the outer god of rot, right? The goddess of rot as she shall become. But I don't think the idea that, okay, there are outer gods, therefore there are inner gods. Yes, for sure. There would be the implication that there was other kinds of gods could exist. But I don't say that necessarily has to differentiate then with the fairies and the, and, like, say, Marika herself. Like, it could just be that there's Marika, who is god, and then there are the other gods who are quote-unquote outer gods, because they are not a person on Earth who has a title and potentially some divine attributes granted to them by the greater will, right? Then there's also the idea that the fairies and the outer gods and all these other beings outside of, like, Marika and the demigods are all connected to the cosmos. And therefore, everything besides the golden lineage and stuff is an outer god or derives from outer gods and the stars and stuff. So again, it just sort of depends on the exact conception of the universe. I was wondering if both Melina and Messmer are reincarnation of twin birds, so that's why they can share the same butterfly. Ooh, that's an interesting idea. That actually represents them both, and it has to do with the twin birds. The problem is I don't know how you get children of Marika to be reincarnations of, say, the twin birds. That's the part where I'm like, okay, I like the idea, but I don't know how we would substantiate that. I think outer gods usually distinguish them from the greater will. That could be another way to put it. Yeah, the greater will is considered the god on the in, and then everything else is considered the god on the out. Why would Death have a separate outer god if the Rune of Death was part of the Elden Ring? Why wouldn't it? The Elden Ring governs even the flow of the stars, which dictate the destinies of people and things, as we see, such as the Rune of Destined Death. So why couldn't it dictate the, why couldn't it have some control over the outer gods? Why couldn't, I don't see why those are mutually exclusive, Night Scout. Ultimately, the Elden Ring is just a collection of runes. Runes which are a script which has some effects upon this universe when expressed, such as when we have our finger reader use them in order to empower our various attributes, whether it's our physical endurance or strength, our intellectual reason ability, our faith, our conviction in the reality of something, regardless of truth, our sensitivity to the arcane, or just our actual our power, which keeps us tethered to our bodies and alive on this earth. Like, there are a lot of things about our physical being that relate to runes, but there are also gods which also relate to that. So it's like, I don't know. I don't see why we would have to preclude the two. Yeah, multiple gods can have job in the same area. That's true. We also don't know how exclusive an outer god's role is. Like, there's the Formless Mother, but there's also the Blood Star. The blood obviously both deal with blood. But are they the same entity? Are they two different entities which have different aspects of control over the same dominion of blood? Is there, does one have absolute dominion and the Blood Star is like an envoy who has shared some more of it to handle a specific subset? Like, there's a lot of questions there. Everything is Velka too. No, I refuse to go down that rabbit hole. I will not fall victim to the same as other content creators where everything is Velka. Do you think those two Spirit Dragonkin soldiers in Snowfields will ever be explained? Again, I've already talked about this in my analysis of Erdtree's beginning and stuff. I think it's already pretty explained. Like, Ordina exists. It's a Nox surface colony. So the Nox were present here. It's not that crazy. I just came from the doctor. My weird boil turned out to be Messmer. 'Tis true. Oh my goodness. Messmer. He's everything. He's everywhere. You see, actually, your boil was actually a very inflated and infected red, because it's just like Messmer's flame, you see. So it actually really is Messmer. Alright, so... Again, I talked about this on Twitter, and I think on the last stream. Pretty sure I mentioned it at least a few times, or at least one person asked for sure. But I'll go over it again. Again, Impaler's Catacombs has nothing to do with Messmer. It has to talk about the act of impaling, yes. but it does not deal with his actual title, which is more literally the Impaling Lord. This is the same term used for Vlad Tepes the Impaler in the Japanese language. It's also used for other fictional characters that are clearly references to Vlad, like Earl Arstor of Karim in Dark Souls. So, similar idea. This is why it's called the Impaler's Catacombs. Because you can be impaled quite easily. Ow! There we go. Inflation? Messmer. Yeah, Messmer's responsible for all the inflation in the economy, chat. It's all Messmer. Velka means debt in Finnish. Ooh, good to know. Yeah, so we have this. Actually, is this enemy... Is there the... I think the boss is dead here, right? So I can just warp here. Yes. And I know, again, other people have also asked about this whole unwanted child thing. They've really latched on to this idea. That maybe this dialogue from this NPC is referring to Messmer as an unwanted child. Again, I've talked about this before with the terminal Toshigo. It is referring to a unwanted child in a sense, yes. It more literally means a lost or fallen child. It historically has referred to a noble's bastard child. Granted, nobles generally don't want their illegitimate bastards coming to light. But having said that, it's obvious both in the context of the NPC, its purpose for the game, and what we find in the surrounding area that's referring to the soulless demigod who is here. And I don't know what to tell you, but I somehow don't think this is Messmer. Yes, everything is Messmer, but I don't think this one is Messmer. Call me crazy. I think it's just a nameless demigod. Another child of Marika, for sure. But that doesn't say much. Marika's got a lot of kids. She really believed in, procreation. You talked to Zeostorm about that on Twitter. A crossover I didn't expect, but that one was welcome. I mean, I had no problem interacting with anything, but I wouldn't talk like I was talking to him necessarily. I was kind of just commenting on his post, but yeah. I just happened to see that. I was like, okay, Zeostorm is talking about it, so this is a very good opportunity to, like, set the record straight. Someone I'm talking to thinks Impaler's Catacomb refers to Messmer, but having the respectful kanji to contrast that would be helpful. Sure, I can post on the Discord for you, Night Scout. I have no problem with that. Hey, Bats. Isn't that more crushing than impaling? Do you see the skeletons that were hanging on there? Looking pretty impaled. Or maybe that's just difference of understanding the same thing by astronomers. Other people, is this... Okay, no, this is not a continuation. Astronomers might see gods as just a cosmic bodies, while others give them godly values. Yeah, I mean, how do you describe it? I mean, this is a fantasy universe. A god is a god. If you want to say that some people see the moon as just the moon, as a planetary body, and others see the moon as a divine entity, like, I don't know, makes the same difference to me. Ultimately, we're talking about stars that have, at least to some degree, a sense of will and consciousness to them, that are able to operate based on certain principles, and have certain affinities associated with them, including controlling the destiny of individuals. And those are hinted at having a relation to entities which are called gods of some outer dimension. Assuming that the outer gods and the stars are synonymous or are within the same class of being, I don't think it really matters, like, why the term outer god is used maybe by some but not others. Especially when most of the references to outer gods are in item descriptions. So it's just Miyazaki just saying whatever he wants for the given moment. I've seen people say that Miquella is Messmer. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. You still working on your Frenzy Flame lore thread? I have not worked on it yet, no. But I do plan to come out with it hopefully this week. Again, it's going to depend on how much time I'm going to have on my free time. I wonder how come these are soulless demigods and not just dead demigods, period. Because they were all assassinated by the same Black Knives, right? So again, if the Black Knives can make, what's his name? Godwin soulless, then logically the same could apply to the other demigods. Now, I guess there is a question then, why Ranni then specifically was able to make herself quote-unquote bodiless, but again, I assume that has to do with the fact that she tried to time it so that way Godwin's assassination would be the exact same time as hers. So that way she could be able to become the soulless only in, that she'd be dead only in body rather than soul. So it might have something to do with there. And then the others weren't so lucky, so they just got the default of both, maybe. Let's see. God is what worshippers consider God. Yeah, exactly. This is something I've talked about extensively with Dark Souls as well, right? Like, ultimately, whether you want to use the term God or kami or what have you, ultimately, what people consider to be a god is effectively a god. We can argue then the different kinds of gods and what entities what physical, corporeal entities they may be, or I guess I should say metaphysical entities they might be. But like, yeah, it's I don't try to obsess over the terminology they use. I just try to figure out, okay, is this thing this thing? If they're the same thing, then good. If they're not, okay, then what differentiates them? What's up with the body snatching stuff in Hyena and Shabriri stuff? With the body snatching, I mean, the thing is, it's not really body snatching, because Arena and Hyena are different physical bodies. Like, Arena's corpse is still where we leave it, even after Hyena is a thing. And it's always there. Same thing with Shabriri, right? Like, there's the possession going on with him and, Yura, right? Yeah. But, like, is there an actual Yura body out there? I assume no. I assume that's actually true blue possession. But, like, what's going on with his body? Why is he possessed or something? I have no idea. I mean, from what I remember, Yura gives the explanation that has to do with, like, maybe his will. So maybe it has to be, like, if you're aligned or give in to the desire to destroy the world and see it all return to nothing or whatever, then maybe Shabriri can possess you. I thought her body disappears afterwards. I remember again, it's been a while, but I remember checking this to confirm, and yeah, her body was still there. But again, someone correct me if I'm just being senile. Because I'm pretty sure we were there to validate, because someone was like saying, no, like her body moves or stuff, and then we went there and we're like, no, see, it's physically still there. Why aren't the bodies of these other demigods not growing like Godwin's? Again, that's a good question. It could be because Godwin was the first. And again, let's assume, for example, that the whole Rune of Death thing kills him and all that. And either because of the Rune of Death or some outer god or whatever you want to fault it on, some force infected Godwin first, quote-unquote. Infected his body first, we should say. That may be why we don't see the other ones affected in the same way. Just a matter of first come, first serve. Again, goes back to that idea of, like, a vessel. If the outer god of Rot needs Melina as a vessel, for whatever the reason being, then perhaps the same thing's true for Godwin. Oh, fun fact, Edgar at the Revenger Shack uses the Frenzy Flame Seal. Okay, yeah. That makes sense. Might be worth checking Arena's body again in case it got removed with a patch. I'm pretty sure there hasn't been a patch that's removed it. Because we did that check, I recall being... Because again, I didn't play the game until well after the patches basically stopped. So, like, there's... Unless it's, like, some stealth patch. There we go. Nope, yep, her body's still here. It's always here. I wonder if Melina will be present in the Land of Shadow and what kind of dialogue she'll have there, assuming we go there before she burns. Yeah, this is interesting, because Melina is not present in the trailer, is she? Like, there is no voice line or anything about her. So I wonder if it's going to be one of those things where the game is just going to continue on, and she's never going to have some separate dialogue here. Like, it doesn't matter, again, to the main story and her mission and stuff. Or if maybe they're gonna have some, like, hidden special dialogue or something. Kind of like what Dusk has when the DLC came out, and she had special dialogue after you complete the DLC. I wonder if they're gonna do something like that, where it's like, okay, Melina's not gonna get involved in anything, but after you complete the DLC or whatever, she'll have, like, new dialogue or commentary or something. That'd be interesting. Huh, my memory's playing tricks on me then. Yeah, don't worry, it happens all the time to the best of us. I wish the Soul League demigods had heads so we had a chance to see their hair color. I mean, I don't know if I want to see the same copy-paste model with the same copy-paste face and hair. But I get the idea, because then you want to see, like, if they're demigods, demigods that might be related to Godfrey or Radagon, right? Especially if they have red hair. I think most people are still operating under the assumption that Messmer is Radagon's child as well, right? I assume that's the general consensus. Now, I'm open to that being a red herring and the possibility that, that there's something else going on with Messmer and why his hair is red that we'll learn during the DLC. But I wouldn't be surprised if, yeah, it turns out he is just Marika and Radagon's child. I even joked on Twitter that I would absolutely love if it turns out that Marika, like, cheated on Godfrey to have Messmer during her research period before, like, you know, Godfrey got sent out on the Long March. Assuming she can even reach the Land of Shadows. That's true. It could also be that she, for whatever reason, can't go there. The problem is that we know Torrent comes from there, because Miquella is writing on Torrent in the Land of Shadow. And then, obviously, Torrent has to somehow end up over with Melina, who's also a spiritual being. So, again, all this stuff sort of ties into the idea of, like, spirits and stuff. I would struggle to think that Melina would be unable to follow us to the Land of Shadow, then. But who knows? Again, there could be some special reasons behind that. Oh, Melina gets some kind of boss fight after the Frenzied Flame ending with the DLC. Otherwise, she's stuck at sequel bait in only one of 6 endings. I'll be honest, I don't think that even as, like, sequel bait, I don't think they would ever elaborate on her stuff in that regard. Like, maybe they do something similar to what they do in Dark Souls 3, and there'll be, like, a side plot involving her in one of the other endings, or the default ending or whatever, but yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like we're ever going to get anything involving Melina beyond what we already have in terms of, like, significant content. Marika and Gwyn would get along so much, lol. They would until they had to compete over anything. Then they would be, like, terrible exes that just want to claw each other's eyes out. Ranni is something from him as well, right? Yeah, I believe there's the idea that the wolf spirits and the bell connect to Miquella too, potentially. So I could see that. Ah, so that's how they do it. Create one thing in the skybox, another around the player. Ah, naruhodo. Yeah, so Erdtree physically comes out here, shines everywhere, does its thing. Oh, good to know. So that's what... So that's they're hiding that clipping with the branch. Good. I thought Torrent is just an ancestral spirit. It's never clarified what exactly he is beyond being a spirit horse. Ancestral spirits are defined by, like, the budding of their branches and horns, though. And we only see him have, like, normal goat horns. So I don't know. I don't know about him being an ancestral spirit in that sense. Also, we don't see ancestral spirits outside of, like, very specific dimensional spaces that we enter through physical bodies that they have, so... Whether those are their mental worlds or something else entirely, I don't know. I think that's why Melina's even more screwed. There's unlikely to ever be a sequel, so she's speaking a worthless, empty thread even more than she already is. I mean, it's not worthless or empty. It's like... It's just where the narrative ends. Like, that doesn't make it worthless or empty. You can imagine or infer what the future might hold. So it's only as worthless and empty as far as you assume that the player, that she might fail. Or that she has 0 chance of succeeding. And if you think so, then okay, yeah, then it's, worthless. But, like, that's a weird thing to word it, Night Scout's like, there's no sequel, therefore it's an empty thread. It's like, what? You don't need a sequel to deliver on something that a character threatens, especially if it says a cliffhanger. They can both double jump. That is true, Baltoy, that is true. The Ancestor Spirits and Torrent can both double jump. Quinn's gonna win, by the way. What proof is there that Messmer's mother is Marika? Well, one, he has a statue of Marika behind his throne, while also referring to her as mother in the trailer. Also, Miyazaki says in interview outright, in fact, in several different interviews, that he is the child of Marika. So yeah, I think that's a pretty open and shut case, if I do say so myself. How powerful is Melina? I don't know. How powerful was the Glowmite Queen? She lost to her mom. Okay, nice, Scout, you're just going on your thing. Again, feel free to go on your reasons. I'm not here to argue with you, but like I said, I think what you stated was kind of weird with how you're wording it. Okay, that's it. No more comments from the peanut gallery? Okay, let's move on then. So, what else did we see? We saw the different towns and stuff. So, if there's a physical translocation happening, I think I mentioned in the last stream, I could see this space being one of those areas where the land was, like, ripped out, right? Because this is the only major gorge in the plateau. And so I could see the idea, if we assume this bridge with its Erd Tree, you know, Elden Ring special tiling stuff, was added by Marika later and didn't predate her kingdom in any fat way, then I could totally see that this is like, okay, there's a giant piece of landmass here, but then it got ripped off and physically separated into wherever the Land of Shadow is. Maybe some Ranni lore, since we don't have a rune. Maybe. We are going to get Liurnia stuff. And that's another thing, is the idea that we might get some elaboration on Ranni, her theoretical, I should say hypothetical sisters that she might have had from Ranni and Radagon's marriage. Sorry, from Renala and Radagon's marriage. Ranni and Radagon. Oh, malala. That'd be quite the deep lore reveal. Do you think we will get Ranni in the DLC? No. I don't think we're going to see any of the characters who are in the main game story, because there would then be so much that the developers would have to account for their story. It's one thing if in the main story, Ranni will have some new dialogue or whatever, being like, ah, I see that you met Miquella, right? That's one thing. But what we're talking about here is the idea of, like, Ranni appearing, having her own, like, little story arc or reason to be there and stuff. And I think that's too much to ask for the game, when it's like, Miyazaki came up and he has the Ranni storyline. He has the Miquella storyline. The main Miquella Hailing Tree storyline, we should say. He has the, Melina storyline. He has the entire thing with Morgod and Moog. He has Godric's entirely different arc. He has the Renala plot thread. Like, there's all these different stories that Miyazaki's already trying to tell in the base game. And from what I can tell, they seem mostly complete. So most of the problem is not, oh, we need more data in order to figure out all the little details. It's mostly fans just need to get up and do the analysis, I would say. Sit down and actually work through the data we already have and come to some proper conclusions. So I don't think that's much of an issue. Now, maybe we'll get some small, like, additions or things, maybe some elaborations and extensions from, like, an item or whatever. Like I've half joked about the ideas, like, ah, yes, we're finally going to learn about Rykard's mother complex from some random weapon we'll find down here, right? It's like, could something like that happen? Sure. But I don't think it's going to be anything too significant beyond that. I don't think we're going to suddenly, like, learn about how, like, Ranni had, like, 3 different masters beforehand, and that she completely learned from them or something like that. And she's gonna now, like, give us a huge info dump about her early life and how she totally missed out as a child because, you know, mother always loved her older brother or something. Like, I don't think we're gonna get anything like that. Yeah, you brought this up before, Onima. You think that the 3 sisters stuff would refer to Renala's sisters instead of Ranni's, right? And again, I could see something like that getting possibly at least further elaborated upon, if not outright clarified, in the DLC. I could see it being a lot more subtle, though, and maybe some indirect stuff, but I could see us getting a little bit more on that. It depends on who the NPC is, who we see sitting in the Cathedral Church area. Crossing my fingers for more elaboration on the god skins. The only elaboration I would want is some final clarity on what the god skins mean by god. Because it was just referring to, like, demigods and things like that. I would like that just to be said outright so we can end that debate. But other than that, I think we're mostly fine with what we have in the lore. I'd rather want more on ancient civilization, dynasty, divine tower builders and stuff. Yeah, I would agree. I think that would be nice to have a bit more lore on them. We are definitely going to see ancient civilization runes, right? Because we see, and you can see it in my thumbnail. Where, you know what, let's do it from here. Ah! No ×5 speed. Going across the map without the handy little key legend is such a pain. But yeah, we see this stuff here, built into the cliff sides and things. Now, again, because we see this stuff with all the greenery, I think that's going to be very important, because it tells me that the land masses, at least if they are physical places that were translocated, it tells us when they were taken. And if they are not physical places that were translocated, it might tell us of the period of time with which they are simulating. And therefore, because this is supposed to be pre-Erdtree and all that stuff, we're going to get a good idea of different cultures and stuff well before the Erdtree or its roots or whatever were changing the landmass so significantly that we would have, like, you know, everything was gold on the plateau. So that could be cool. Might find out more on the Glowmite Queen. I'll be honest, I don't think so, but yeah, it's possible. It's totally possible. Personally, though, again, I think that type of stuff, I think the stuff with Melina and the demigods in the main game are mostly all told as far as to the point that Miyazaki's at least satisfied for one game. If there's a sequel, he may want to, like, you know, dive into more detail and stuff, similar to what happens with Dark Souls 3, but I feel like as a standalone game, I think he's happy with the stuff in terms of most characters, most of the main, major players in the main game. I think the biggest stuff that he wants to clarify here, as he says, is Marika's past and the civilizations which existed before the Erdtree. Sage's Cavern near here has the Raven Mount assassin gear, lots of illusory walls, and a Black Knife assassin. Do you think the assassins might have prepared for the Night of the Black Knives there? No, I think what's more likely is that a Raven Mount assassin hid out there, just like various other parties. Because what it looks like we have various parties. We have thieves, we have soldiers and knights who are chasing after the thieves to execute them. We have, obviously, the Black Knife Assassin. We have the actual quote-unquote sage, right? Well, not Gowry, whatever his name is, the other guy. Garrus, actually, right? Like, I think that's the Necromancer Garrus. So, like, I think it's just a matter of Sage's Cave is just a bunch of different people all went into this cave to hide out. It just became an increasing cluster frick because you'd basically have, like, okay, so you have the Sage Garrus here, but then someone else comes in. So Sage Garrus is now gonna, you know, off them while they sleep in their like tents or whatever that night, and then use them for necromancy, right? And then, you know, rinse and repeat with every new party that comes in. Oh, but Garrus has to move out of his area because a Black Knife Assassin has moved in here, and the Black Knife Assassin has now taken over his original place where he rests, so now he's in a separate cavern part of it, right? Like, that seems to be the story with the cave, from what I can tell. Look at the dumb nerd. Did Shattering shift and sync landmasses like Similarian style? I would say no, but I'm not too familiar enough with Lord of the Rings lore to know how much that might have played an inspiration for Miyazaki. I mean, as is, I would say that most of the landmass as we see is accurate to how it was both before and after the Elden Ring was shattered. Like, the largest changes, in my opinion, is actually the water, not the actual land. I think a lot more stuff was left to be flooded and things because, you know, it's a war and nobody's paying attention to civil management. Met Corin, of course. Yeah, we have the Grand Lift here, of course. I wonder if it could, maybe we could see some stuff. Because another question I guess I have to consider is, if the land is like its own isolated ecosystem and can operate independent of the lands between, so it's not like it's frozen in time or anything of that sort, then we could also think of it as possible being that there was in fact gold parts of the landmass that did turn to gold because of the Erdtree, but now because they are in the land of the Shadow Tree, the land is reverting back to its default because there is no Erdtree to affect it. True Erdtree, I should say. And therefore, any gold that they might have had has been lost, and they've sort of evolved back into their original adaptation. as greenery. That's another possibility I didn't consider. Hi, Loki, may I ask your pronouns? I know I sound like a woman, but I am in fact a man. So please, he, him, but honestly, I don't care. I've seen in the Russian community someone arguing that there might be a link between Eglay, the Shadowland, and Messmer and his snakes, but I don't know about it. So this goes back to our talk about where does Messmer's flame come from? Does it come from the Immortal Serpent? Does it come from the Giants? Does it come from the Frenzy? Does it come from all these things that we can name as sources of powerful fires with magical properties? And we don't know. It could be its own thing entirely. So I don't know how much the snake thing plays into it. We know he's surrounded by snakes, so that at least gives some possible connection to Gelmir. But then again, to be fair, we do see the snail snakes. Those do exist, and it's not 100% clear if the snail snakes come from Gelmir or if they're like their own separate evolutionary tree, and the snakes and the eventual snakemen that would come from the snakes on Gelmir, or I guess we should say the one immortal serpent, are actually going to be like its own separate thing. So like, I would say maybe. I don't know. The thing I have with like tying it to an existing power source is that then it becomes like its own separate thing you have to explain from the Shadow Tree and why Messmer's there. And again, it may just be my writing instinct, but I feel like Miyazaki would rather create a completely new flame and source of flame and try to explain that for the DLC, so it doesn't affect anything else that exists in the main game to that degree. But then again, it could be simple as Messmer was at Gelmir for a time before Rykard, and he picked up a few snakes, and he learned about like fire sorcery and stuff from the old pagans or whatever, even though, again, it's not supposed to exist anymore by this point. Or actually, you know, maybe it would exist, because the pagan worship of the snake was allowed for a while. So if you argue that Messmer was born during, like, Godfrey's reign, you could definitely get away with that. But yeah, there's just so many unknown variables with Messmer. We may not even get Godwin or Miquella / St. Trina as boss fights. I think people are just expecting them to be, but I wouldn't be so sure. Yeah, that is totally possible. Like, I would totally say I would be expecting a Trina boss fight, because, again, I'm expecting generally Miquella stuff in that DLC. With his whole dream world, with the dream world stuff, and everything related to that, so I'm expecting that to get built on and clarified. But does that mean we're gonna get like a secret Trina boss? We don't know. Miyazaki is hinting at secret bosses and optional boss fights and stuff like that. So, maybe, but it's not guaranteed, for sure. Yeah, I don't know about this stuff here. Let me see the landmass on this side for a second. What is the disconnect between the mountaintops and Altus like? I mean, you could probably get away with saying there was more landmass on this side, too. Even if it didn't extend as far as to allowing, snow and stuff. But it's also possible we just don't see snow because the environment is so different in the Lands of Shadow. So it's like, these could be parts of the mountaintops. Like, okay, so take what's in my thumbnail. Imagine if the ancient Civ ruins we see are actually part of the mountaintop ancient Civ ruins, but because of the translocation of to the Land of Shadow, there is no chilly climate to be preserved, and therefore the snow has melted, and now it's just normal Greenland. I could see that being a thing too. And we'll find out because there'll be like, I don't know, maybe some like rhyme, what's it called? The rhyme crystal buds that we can loot in like some cave in that part of the map or something. Maybe we'll finally get a boss that uses sleep. I actually support this. I think sleep should be a major component of the DLC. Obviously, it shouldn't be like only sleep stuff. You should have a little bit of a mix. But I would like at least like 30% of all enemies in the DLC to involve the sleep mechanic. Especially the harder ones. Just so that way, sleep is more relevant. There's a sleep swamp, so if there's a boss there, that'll be interesting. Is there a sleep swamp? I don't recall any swamp that would put you to sleep. I know the world made isn't to scale, but how did the owners of those giant skulls all fit in lands between? You answered your own question with the first part. That is the answer. If you actually built out the full skeletons that you see in Caelid in the mountaintops, like, they would take up, like, most of the lands between. Like, there's no way to have all those skeletons actually fit in the landmass at the same time. They would all be so cramped and crowded. It would be ridiculous. So, like, no. Yeah. This is artistic license. People are speculating the purple flower patch with the NPC laying down and the skeleton on the melting horse is a sleep swamp. Ah, I see. That would be cool. I would love... that's another thing I'm really looking forward with the DLC, is new enemies, which we might get new origins for. Now, I don't know if we're going to get more hints to the origins of existing stuff, like the Vulgar Militia, or the Giants, or things of that nature. That may be one of those deep lore, you better think really hard about the cosmology of this universe in the main game type of thing. So I could see... definitely this space, right? And maybe a bit from here. So yeah, I could definitely see some of this stuff actually being like, okay, yeah, there was actually landmass here. And we're gonna hint at that. Maybe... maybe even landmass that connected the mountaintops and stuff more than just the sliver. So that's going to be cool, if so. Another problem, though, is the towns and stuff. Like, let's assume the towns weren't built after the transfer to the Land of Shadow. Where would we place the towns here? Like, I could see the one town that's covered in veils maybe coming from this part of the landmass, right? Before the Minor Erd Tree and the Forest Dweller village was here. I'm counting really hard on something happening about Revenants. Oh, yeah, definitely. I would love if we got more Revenant lore. I'd also like the star guys, right? The ones who, like, go to meteor crashes and stuff. I'd like a little more on them. So, over here. Not because there's anything actual, like, super deep about their lore that I think could be elaborated upon. But because I would love to know if there's a bit more on, like, that type of culture or something. If there's more history, if maybe it goes back to, like, the ancient dynasties or something like that. Because we find a few of them down there, and it does make me curious if maybe they're trying to follow or recreate the footsteps of the ancient dynasty at all. But again, that goes back to my desire for more ancient dynasty lore. With your theory that Erd Tree grew from Placky's god, how does the DLC's reveal that tree was born in the Land of Shadow affect the fingerprint shield being in the lands between? I would say it doesn't affect it, especially if the idea of a mirror world or type of parallel universe stays intact. Because again, I talked in the Erd Tree's beginning about the idea of the roots spreading and the idea that the pre-Erd Tree era would definitely be accurate if there are roots, but the tree hasn't yet broken ground, at least until much later. So the question would just be then on if the Erd Tree being born is referring to the actual tree, or just the idea of the, that the pre-existing roots or whatever didn't fully manifest into the Erd Tree proper. It was just an Erd Tree in potential up until Marika comes down and becomes the proper god. This also could potentially shift the timeline on when she becomes god, because currently in my analysis I make the presumption that it happens after she takes over the land and gets access to the Erd Tree, but this could potentially hint that either she went into a parallel dimension or she did go to this dimension, but she had the Erd Tree properly born before she took over the landmass. So again, some interesting stuff to see. But yeah, I don't think that would affect much otherwise. We'll just have to see with the final game to see if it ever affects any of my theories radically in that regard. I don't know if this is relevant information, but the Carian NPC looks to have Elizabethan neck ruff, so they are probably part of the Carian aristocracy, an older one, perhaps since the ruff is unique. Yeah, I pointed this out before. I don't think it could be some random nobody, because that collar is way too stupid looking to not belong to some noble or elite class person. And so I'm totally open to the idea of either being another Carian princess, or some major aristocrat, or something of that regard. Why do people think that Fallingstar Beasts grow it up into these Estelle/Fallen Star creatures when there's literally a boss called Fully Grown Fallingstar Beast or something like that? Because of the face. The Fallingstar Beast, let's go to another character, right? The Fallingstar Beast has the similar skull with eyeball that Estelle has. So a lot of people would think that, and they obviously have the pincers going for them too. So a lot of people would sort of think, oh, okay, so like, you have Fallingstar Beast, you have the fully mature Fallingstar Beast, and then you would have Estelle as the next step in that process, right? Now, personally, I assume that they are in fact like, they're similar because they both come from the stars, but they are like separate branches on the evolutionary tree, so to speak, right? Really? That's all I got for... Oh, you know what? I know which... I have too many characters, chat. I can't remember who's been to where anymore. Can't wait for all of your theories to be rendered null by the DLC. I mean, hey. I just have to change them to the right theories, then. I have no problem with that. It's Renala's Kenneth Height, a total asshole of the aristocracy. I mean, Kenneth's not that bad. I mean, he's kind of a pompous prick, but he's not that bad. For me, it's more that they're from the same place, space, but also to invoke the antlion imagery. Yeah, again, that would be sort of my point, right? It's like, I think they are related beings, but I don't think they're, like, they are a, one is more advanced form of the other in terms of, a life cycle, right? But yeah, most people, I think, zero in on this. And the fact that you have the skull, the face, with the nose, right? And they just sort of look at that and they're like, okay, you take that, you take the pincers... Okay, and then you look at Estelle, and you're like, okay, that's like this, plus like 50-something years or whatever, right? He mostly dunks on Godric, who deserves it. Exactly! I mean, we wouldn't have awesome bangers if we didn't have, Kenneth Height. He gives us all the juicy Godric lines. We gotta talk about how Godric basically sat there licking Melinia's toes. It's thanks to Kenneth that we got to know about how he basically shut himself in his castle like a bitch when Radagon came passing by. Like, come on. Kenneth's a bro. He helps make Godric the awesome little loser we love him to be. There's also the ceiling Estelles, whose JP name uses the same kanji, supposedly for insects leaving their cocoons. Yeah, so there's a lot, there's a lot there that leads us to at least believe that, Estelle and the Fallingstar Beast are probably different but related entities, right? Because they both, like was mentioned earlier, come from the cosmos, the stars, outer space. Do you notice that the sleeping persons in the mask hair, isn't even hair, it's a cloth? The sleeping persons in the mask hair? You have to clarify for that, Oniwa. Withered Estelles, but the withered is used for insects leaving cocoons in Japanese. I remember looking that up for you, Night Scout, but I don't remember what my finding was. I have to go double check that. I can't remember how accurate that was. I know the withered part is accurate, but I don't remember if I found anything on leaving cocoons. I can just ask a friend when I'm done here, so... The big girl's blouse. Fully grown for the... reminds me of the antlion bit. Oh, for sure. You can definitely get the antlion imagery and stuff looking at these things. Right? 100%. I also like how it has this, like, oxen body to it. I wonder if that's significant in any way. Because I don't know any symbolism for oxes and stuff beyond, you know, general cow symbolism in history, so... Fallingstar Beasts also seem to like staying in their craters, akin to antlions having sand traps they use to bait and ambush creatures. That's an interesting parallel. Maybe that was part of the inspiration. Estelle's definitely seem more like the burrower type, like they like to get around and find their own layers elsewhere. So is Estelle a generic name for them, or is there some other reason there are two Estelle named bosses? It seems to be a generic name. I assume Estelle is kind of like a species name, essentially. Like, it's not just a name for the entity, like, called a Stell, but it's the name of an Stell, so to speak, right? That would be my assumption. Mature antlands are more delicate, but can fly and wander, matching the look of Estelles and how at least one Estelle traveled from Deeproot to the Grand Cloister. Yeah, sure. No problem with that. But yeah, looking at what we got here. I think most of the physical stuff we're going to see is going to center around Altus, assuming these are going to be, like, separate pieces of map that were disconnected from the Lands Between proper, wherever the Land of Shadow ends up being, in terms of temporally and spatially. I guess I should say in terms of planes. Back to you. I think also from what we see, most of the lore is going to focus around either the arcane stuff, so space, the cosmos, the stars, watery type things, you know, that type of stuff, the eldritch horrors of the deep, of the primeval current, and things of that nature. I think we're gonna get a little bit of Liurnia, but I don't know how much it is, because it depends on where that, like, church that looks like the Church of Manicelis is. If it's supposed to be like the Church of Manicelis in the past, or if it's supposed to be something else, that could affect things seriously. Because one, it's going to confirm that there are simulations of existing places in the quote-unquote real world, right, in the Lands Between. And two, it might tell us that there's, it might give us some extra history bits and stuff about Liurnia that we didn't know before. But yeah, I think most of it's going to focus around Altus, Marika, and Messmer, and Miquella. I think most other references to the other demigods and other parts of the main game are going to be, like, either non-existent or very scant, from what we've seen. I'm also interested in what the new characters being introduced are, because we get our guy in the golden robe who gets, like, stabbed by that giant rune thing, right, and is pulling it out of himself. I'm curious how important he's gonna be. If he's going to be, like, some major player in the history of this place, or if he's going to be kind of like some side character that looks important, but actually isn't. Like, he's going to be like, you know, oh, he's important to the local dungeon, but that's about it. But there's also the mysterious woman with the veil, who may or may not be Marika, so I guess we'll just have to see. Because apparently Estelle's title means bastard. Okay, this goes back to what I said at the beginning of the stream with Otoshigo. Yes, the term can refer to a noble's bastard. It generally refers to a fallen/lost child, and to clarify, that term is mostly used for, as, like, it's used in the same way that I would say monster, right? As in narrative fiction, especially in Miyazaki's games, it tends to just be used as a generic term for something you don't want or don't like, right? Because it like, to give it, like, a dictionary, like, technical definition, it's the idea of a consequence or byproduct, or I should say a bad or evil consequence or byproduct of something else. So, like, for example, I might consider the Erd Tree an Otoshigo. It is this unwanted child, because I think the Erd Tree is evil, and I think the very existence of the Erd Tree is bad. So the fact that the Erd Tree was born from whatever events caused it to come to exist, therefore make it this awful, fallen, lost child that does not deserve to exist on this earth. Oh, so more of a monster of the void, yes. And the term for void actually more accurately means the darkness, right? So, it's more so... when it's called the natural born of the void, or you have the item which is, like, called, like, the bastard's wing or whatever it is, right? It's referring to what I call spawn. Because whenever you hear spawn, it's never for anything good. You don't call your child a spawn if you love your child, right? It's your baby, it's your child, it's your offspring, it's your kin. You never call it your spawn. So I like translating Otoshigo as spawn. And you'll see that consistently in my translations on my website. So, when we're talking about Estelle being the natural born of the void, we're talking about the spawn of the darkness, right? It was born from the darkness, or at least came from it, into the Lands Between. And it's considered bad because it destroyed the eternal city it entered into, right? which is the whole point of the spell Eternal Darkness, right? Talking about how it destroyed the Eternal City and stuff, because Eternal Darkness and that giant portal of darkness that it opened is where Stell came from. Again, I recommend to those who haven't, check the link in the description of this video to go to my website, lokisouls.com, and check out Erdtree's Beginning, because it might give you a lot of my thoughts about the origins of this, before the DLC was obviously formally announced. We'll see after the DLC how much my positions hold up, or if I'll be changing any of them. When I grew up into the 90s, I was really into comic books. Well, then you're awesome. You'd be a cool kid. I don't see why that would be awful. I want to know more about the heavy armored machine gun perfume dude. Yeah, that guy who looks to be an NPC with that, super weapon? Yeah, that'd be cool. I can't wait! I can't wait for us to get a new perfumer, what's it called? Not knave, the page? And instead of just shooting 3 bullets, it shoots like 20. It's like, dodge this, sucker! That thing's annoying enough as is. I can't wait for his super form. But yeah, that NPC looks interesting. All the NPCs look interesting, though, to be honest. Like, one person was suggesting that maybe the NPC's connected to Radon, the one with, like, the Greek, armor chestplate and the D-like mask. Like, there's so much potential for the NPCs we'll meet and who they are. Though I still stand by, I think a lot of them are going to be very idiosyncratic. Like, we're going to learn about them specifically and their very personal history, but it's going to deal with some random country that they happened before they turned into Tarnished or something and isn't going to connect to the lighter world. Don't quote me on that, but that's my feeling. That tends to be what happens with NPCs in the DLCs. Spawn of Darkness was spawned from the Eternal Darkness spell. I know, crazy. Love the perfumers, but not at all a fan of pages. Yeah. It's just the fact that they pull out that crossbow so quickly that if you're not, like, 100% prepared for it at all times, like, it can really catch you off guard and you're gonna, like, die. Finally, some abs on armor! Our armor finally has abs. I don't know if this would be a space where, a similar thing could happen, right? Where there's, like, a huge part of the landmass where the Shaded Castle exists now that's been taken. Maybe. Because in my timeline events, the Shaded Castle doesn't exist until Godfrey starts taking over the region. So, I totally can see the idea that this was once actually not a gorge, but, like, one continuous landscape. Don't know about the complete valley, but I could totally see this, being a huge landmass that might actually be shown in the DLC. Speaking of perfumers, why did Rollo decide that he had to mercy kill omens and a mask of the demons who torture them and bleed them out with their own horns? I don't know, you have to ask Rollo. But Rollo felt the need that that the only mercy was to give them death. And the only way that he could go through with it was by basically killing his heart. So, I guess you could argue that after killing their heart, they become so heartless and cruel that that Rollo and those like him fashion those masks afterward. I have to double check the descriptions because I don't remember if it says when exactly the masks were fashioned, if it was before or after they started, you know, hunting Omen down. Absolute morning. Seeing Gelmir reminds me, I looked at Gelmir from the Three Sisters area. I wonder why Gelmir doesn't collapse into the sea. Because the serpent, clearly it's keeping it alive. Though now that you mention it. Because it did seem like a solid mountain instead of, like, pillars or something. I mean, granted, what we see from the volcano with the serpent, it is, like, supported mainly by pillars. So that isn't wrong. Oh, well, that's not the way we want to go. Why is there so much madness stuff in Gelmir? You'd have to clarify what you mean by madness stuff. I remember the troll, but that's about it. And the idea with the blasphemous people is that they take in the blasphemous, so I'm not surprised if we see some frenzied adherents end up being taken in by those in support of blasphemy. If only because they have similar goals aligned with each other. But yeah, you have this open... You have these open pillars and stuff. So, like, Snake would be, like, somewhere, like, here, right? So this would be... Oh. Alright, so it should be here somewhere, right? Yeah. So yeah, basically where the mountain actually becomes a mountain. For sure. Now, as for why all this, I don't know. I think one of the people on my Discord had mentioned that these specific kinds of rocks are being used might have to do with volcanic activity. I may be misremembering, though. So maybe this is supposed to be interpreted as, like, some of the lava and stuff, which spilled out from Gelmir here, would fall, and it would create these dripping things. So these are kind of like, you know, stalagmites or stalactites with water or whatever, right? So it creates these formations as lava and stuff dripped and hardened and things falling off into the ledge. That's the only thing I could think of, though. There are not insignificant amount of mad soldiers. Are there? I only remember the troll. I don't remember if anyone else there has the frenzy in them. Would it make sense that the Land of Shadow is formed of many different pieces of land from the lands between instead of a big landmass? Yes, that would be the main argument, would be that it's a bunch of different pieces of the lands between, potentially all from Altus, potentially not, that would all be sort of like, you know, mashed together. Kind of like the Hunter's Nightmare in Bloodborne. Similar idea, except in the Hunter's Nightmare, it's purely, you know, simulating those places that exist in reality at a specific point in time. In this case, we don't know. It could be some of it's some simulation, and some of it's the real thing. Could be it's all one or the other. We're just gonna have to see. But I don't think, yeah, I don't think that's absurd on its face to say. There's a whole camp of frenzied Lane-Dale soldiers because they are... okay. I'm thinking about, like, Volcano Manor and stuff. You mean, like, larger Gelmir. Okay, yeah. That's because of the troll. Troll shoots out its frenzied flame I-beams because they're trying to attack from this angle. Right? So they have their camp here. Troll blasts them with I-beams. They get infected with the flame of frenzy. And, well, the rest is history. Yeah. Okay, I completely forgot about the camp guys that are all the way over here, so thank you for reminding me. I was like, wait, I remember guys with, like, poison in their heads, but not with, frenzied flame. Yeah, it looks like volcanic basalt, which forms, hexagonal pillars. I don't know if it's hexagonal, because we see that type of stuff in Bloodborne, but I don't think we quite see that here, right? We don't quite see that here. It's more square than anything. But yeah, it could be related to that, which, if so, has some interesting implications if we consider that we find some of that stuff in, like, more of that formation in Liurnia and things. Loki, you're so goddamn forgetful. That I am. Sorry, should have been clear. No problem. That was my misinterpretation. Because you're saying, like, madness and stuff on Gelmir, and I'm thinking, like, at the Volcano Manor in the actual volcano, but not the larger area. I should have remembered. How you doing, my mans? Uh-oh, chat. The dog is awakened. You gonna make me have to leave and go BRB again, doggy? Or are you gonna get your ball stuck under the bed or something? Form 6. Yeah, okay, that covers it, guys. So yeah, I can totally see, like, different parts of the landmass making up the whole of the Land of Shadow if it's not one giant landmass on its own. As other people have brought up, it could be the idea that there is of it being, like, kind of like a dream world and a bunch of recreations of stuff, but we'll have to see how true that is. Again, it would be interesting to know how the cities and civilizations we're seeing, because we are going to see physical stuff like the Lion Dancer, right? So is that is, like, the town we're going to explore a living city, or has it been in ruins since it got sent to the Land of Shadow, and only those survivors who are still left and have somehow survived up until now continue to remain in this, you know, this obsolete capital or whatever, right? Is that what's going on there? Or is it like the city is still alive and vibrant and we're gonna go, like, genocide entire people to get to the boss? Granted, I guess you could argue Messmer may have genocided them for us, so we're just, you know, picking up the sloppy seconds. Nardi's more into geological stuff, I recall, and she's the one that brought it up in the first place. Yeah, for sure. The DLC knows that the land has been burned by Messmer's flame, so it could have been alive when banished, but he since killed it. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. It could be that Messmer's, like, done all the destruction for us, and this was a thriving, you know, living, you know, again, to use that term we were talking about earlier, like, continent, essentially its own, like, you know, separate landmass, whatever the, you know, cosmological significance of the Land of Shadow is. And it basically, they were kind of like their own, like, different communities and, like, you know, like, network of civilizations up until Messmer came in. Ah, yes, another genocidal demigod. I mean, what's one more, right? What's one more? I don't see the problem with that. It doesn't look burned. Okay, I assume when it's talking about, I think, if I recall correctly, the burnt by Messmer's flame, at least in the trailer, was the terminology, which in Japanese is like, wasn't it something like death to all those without light? The flame of Messmer to them or something like that. I can't remember the exact phraseology, but it was, I believe that's the one that the localization was like burned by Messmer's flame. So it wouldn't be like a literal burning the whole landscape. It'd be more so I'm killing everybody with my fire and everything affiliated with my fire. I wonder if Moog has made it, especially Tarnished, we should say, because I think that line is specifically in the context of the Tarnished and stuff, so we should keep in mind that these are lines that are being said usually during boss fights. I wonder if Moog has made it into the Land of Shadow, or if Miquella has to actively invite someone in. Ooh, that's an interesting idea. Does Miquella invite the people in, or is it with anyone who has access to his body? We know from cut content that there was an idea of people not being able to freely enter even after they found Miquella's body, and they were basically, like, appealing to have Miquella, you know, welcome them to his dreamscape. So we'd have to see. It's possible that Miquella's storyline is, in fact, that he's trying to pave the dreamscape using the Land of Shadow, but he can't do that because Messmer is currently there and in charge. And he was trying to maybe, like, get information and learn how to do it on his own. But then he ultimately realizes he needs someone, he needs a quote-unquote true king in order to, take that over. And so he has Torrent sent out with Melina or whatever to find us as his promised lord, right? Maybe it's something like that. Loki certainly supports it, especially in regards to Albinorix. Yeah! Let's get rid of those filthy, stinking silvers. You know who I want to be my next Elden Lord, chat? Whatever demigod advocates the exterminations of the silvers. We don't need their kind here. Embraced by Messmer's flame. Yeah, okay, that's the line. Certainly support. Yeah, okay, yeah. Read that up. But yeah, so I think in terms of, like, actual plotting, we're probably going to see, like, Miquella probably use us for his own ends. Now, whether those ends are totally benevolent or not, like, has he completely, like, given up on his plans with the Hailing Tree and stuff? Has he, like, changed his position from, like, what his followers think he advocates or advocated? That I think we're going to have to still see as well. Like that in regards to winter lanterns. Get rid of all the winter lanterns! Not till the last lantern did winter will we be able to finally rest peacefully. We must make sure that they are exterminated for future generations! Can't wait to fight DLC boss with 20-hit combo. You know, you're being sarcastic, but... No, the Albinorics! Keep them away from Loki! How dare all of you. The description for the video has a poem where it goes something, something, unsung bottle, then under it, burned by Messmer's flame. Okay, yeah, so that description in the YouTube video is seemingly a localization of the one used in the Japanese website, which uses the term basically, I think, because so the English is like Persian unsung battle. Japanese is basically that, but it's more so a case, it's a land of purges and unsung battles or battle. It should also be acknowledged that the purge can refer to a political purge as well. So again, I'm pretty sure the main, like, story, like, the main, like, you know, like, world quest, if I were to talk about it in those terms, for the DLC is going to be Messmer and the local factions that were already existing in the Land of Shadow have been at war. He has won. The other factions may not necessarily have been good guys per se, but they're now being currently oppressed and mounting feeble resistances against Messmer's forces, and we're gonna go through and basically take out Messmer and maybe help liberate them to some extent. But we're probably also gonna kill them too, because we don't care. We're equal opportunists, right? We're gonna kill every faction's boss if we can. Did you hear about the new Elden Ring manga? I did hear about that, and I think that's actually very good, because Miyazaki's been hinting at more Elden Ring, possibly, even if it's not in the case of sequels. And I think having another opportunity for a manga, especially after the last manga, which was super successful, but this one maybe being a serious storyline with a canon script from Miyazaki himself, would be awesome. I think it's also a lot more viable, because, one, if it's a Japanese manga, then that means that Miyazaki could just write in Japanese. The manga will get made by an artist who's able to perfectly understand what he's talking about and even talk to him for clarity if needed for anything. And stuff, same with, like, any new designs or whatever that the manga artist might have to make. And then, it can always be officially localized afterwards. And you could have maybe even Frog Nation or whoever handle the localization, since they're the ones most familiar with the original translation, the terms and stuff. But, like, yeah, I could totally see us getting an actual serious canon comic. Will it happen? I don't know. It could be another gag manga. Who knows? Ah, yes, another political purge in Elden Ring. Yes, I know, right? I know, Miyazaki, he's really going out there, right? He's really trying to explore some new ideas never before seen in his games. So you have Albinorics. I remember wondering why there's a poison swamp there, then I realized the swamp is full of bodies. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, once you notice all the bodies, you're like, ah, that's it. Ah, I see. There's a lot of rotten flesh in there. I do find it interesting that the boiling river here, by the way, doesn't actually hurt us. Like there's the pockets of, like, super hot steam and stuff, but, like, the actual water in general, despite being, like, what, called the seething river or whatever in English, right? Where is it? Yeah, Seeth Water River here, right? So it's, like, called just the seething river, the boiling river in Japanese, but, like, it's not actually, the water's mostly fine. We need an anime adaptation of the gag manga. Honestly, if it funds From Software's projects going forward, I say go ahead. Why not? Why not? It's better than them like, coming up with, like, a Hollywood film. Who would be the equivalent of Aldrich in the Elden Ring manga? So he'd be looking for a character who is a holy man who thinks that he is on some sacred mission while simultaneously being an absolutely terrible human being who is into cannibalism and possibly rape. I mean, I guess you could always add a new demigod who fills that type of role. Maybe even an omen? Like, that'd be the best I could think of. Because then you'd also have it where he becomes a sludge monster, potentially. And I don't know if eating a bunch of stuff could, especially, like, negative stuff with magical powers, could turn you into a sludge monster, like with Aldrich. I'm not sure if the same metaphysical rules will apply. Oh, you can see snowfields from Gelmir? Yep. You can see it from up here. Wonder if Gideon will address the Land of Shadow when it comes out. I feel like Gideon is one of the characters who would most likely actually acknowledge. Like, we would be like, hey, there's this Land of Shadow. And he'd be like, oh, really? That's a surprise. All right, gonna add it to his little, like, list of places that he wants to have his spies explore in the future. And then he's going to give us some special reward as a thanks, and then we're done. Aldrich is just Dung Eater, Fia, and God-Devouring Serpent combined. Yeah, it doesn't have to be, he's just a composite character. You see, Miyazaki actually had Elden Ring in mind when he was making Dark Souls 3. He was already in the talks with Martin, you see, and then, like, after that, he decided he would condense them all into the character of Aldrich. They need to tread carefully, heed the lesson from all the way back to Demon Souls, don't sell your soul. Yeah. I would agree. I'd want From Software to be careful with this, but now that like Miyazaki's president and he's been he pushed the DS2 propaganda really hard in one of the interviews. Not as hard as people are saying. I think some of the news media has been like over exaggerating what he said there, but he's definitely trying to push it, being like, you know what, it's very important that we have projects where I'm not in charge and people learn to like stand on their own 2 feet, which is true. I think that is very much a truism from Miyazaki there. And I think a lot of what Miyazaki wants to do is make sure that From Software is more self-sufficient, so that way they can do their own projects without having to worry too much about what the whims of, like, publishers and stuff, right? And I think one way to do that is to expand into multimedia. I think it's also a piece where Miyazaki, I think over the years he's slowly been getting tired of his subtlety and storytelling, which he's so committed to, has limited him based on the amount of projects he's able to take on. Because then this means that Demon Souls, Bloodborne, and Dark Souls, up until now, haven't been revisited because he's been so busy with Elden Ring, and maybe he's going to be able to revisit them now in the future, but, like, when's he going to next be able to revisit Elden Ring? So I think having side projects that he can do, where he could maybe tell a more conventional story, with a more conventional script, might be up his alley. Now, granted, Miyazaki hates his own script writing ability, so who knows? He maybe just, like, have a ghostwriter do it. Or maybe he'll just talk to the manga artist, and the manga artist will write the story, but he'll just give pointers on, like, the general outline and stuff. I was sad when I realized I had to fight Gideon. Immediately when I realized he wasn't at his desk, I was like, oh no. That is a really cool way to foreshadow it. He actually, like, doesn't appear at his desk when the time comes for his boss fight. I missed most of the stuff about his nasty business. I'll be honest, I will always like Gideon. And no, it's not because he genocided the Albinorics. I just like his character and his voice acting. I get the feeling that Miyazaki likes making new universes more than anything. I do feel that there's some of that is true, but I don't think it's entirely it. He does seem to like, he does like to re-explore old worlds and things like that, but I do agree it's probably harder for him because he has to come up with new stuff for a story and a world that he already feels like he probably has mostly completed. Beyond maybe, like, some details that he could probably expand upon. Well, Dark Souls 2 and 3's problem was that Dark Souls 1 was a completed game. It wasn't designed with sequels in mind. It told a complete story. It didn't need sequels. It got them because Namco Bandai wanted more money from the IP. Which is why we got Dark Souls 2. And then Miyazaki felt bad about Dark Souls 2 ending on such a sour note for people, so he stepped in to be director of Dark Souls 3 after Bloodborne. Most people treat Miyazaki as the sole auteur of the Soulsborne games, when it's a much more collective effort with many talented people. Well, he's the writer and the game's director, so ultimately what he says goes. So it's very fair to say that he's the auteur. But yes, he does like involving, you know, concept artists and things like that. Like, it's not like every single thing came from his mind. I think the Gaping Dragon is the best example of that. He didn't specifically ask for what the Gaping Dragon boss we got. He was talking about something more general in the philosophy and the world building. Someone came back with a specific design based on what he said there, and he liked the design, so then he fit that design into the story and world that he was then crafting. And it became, again, part of that collaborative effort. I think Bamco had From on a 3 contract game, maybe all specified as Dark Souls. I don't know about that. I don't know if there was a contract there involved, but ultimately, From Software were a very small studio, and Dark Souls was one of their super major hits, so I understand why they would accept any ask for a sequel. No one rules alone, Loki. Indeed. Anyway, so I think we've talked about a lot of stuff regarding the DLC. I don't know if that like covers every little detail I'd like to talk about of what could potentially be in there. But I think it's a fair bit to say that we're probably going to go in chasing after Miquella. There's going to be a bunch of NPCs who maybe have similar goals, either because they're aligned with Miquella, want to kill him, or something in between. We're probably going to get wrapped up into the conflict with Messmer as a byproduct. Maybe Miquella is going to be using us for that purpose, but it's mostly probably just going to be us being like, okay, yeah, sure, why not, because we're here anyway. And then by the end of it, it's probably going to be like the veil will be lifted, and there maybe be some minor changes in the overworld or whatever, but nothing too significant that'll affect our actual main story and its endings. So to get the Messmer engine going again for today's stream, D's cape has a snake on it. That might be worth a look now. Yeah, maybe. We're gonna have to see how significant snakes are with Messmer. Because is it going to be like, is the Caduceus thing like going to be one of those things where it's always going to be associated with him, or is he just going to be one of many characters who has it associated, like you said with D? I could see a case where Messmer may have been a key proponent of fundamentalism, similar to Miquella, before going off and doing his own thing with the Flame. At least it looks like From is pushing to publish their own games, which is way better than to have to rely on Bamco or any other. I agree. I think it's better if From Software is... Now that From Software is in a position where they have both the reputation and the capital to spend, they should try to go out on their own with their projects. Because the worst thing that could happen to them is they become tied down and end up corporatized. I think the longer that they're able to keep their creativity alive through Miyazaki and other... you know, up-and-coming new directors, the better. From Soft went from a very niche studio to a million seller, for sure. I mean, it's amazing to me that the Armored Core studio has become so well-known for their fantasy RPGs, and I'm so happy about that. D's accepted as a Golden Order fundamentalist, a later generation thing, but as a snake cape, as early reviled enemy. Curious contrast. It depends on exactly what the symbolism for the snake and stuff goes, because could the snake be associated with Golden Order fundamentalism and Messmer? Yes, maybe. Could it also be that it's a carryover from whatever civilization or culture that D, etc., and his, well, the two Ds basically came from? Yeah, maybe. It sort of depends on when exactly we're supposed to believe the armor was adopted by them, along with the cape. If it's a late thing, then yeah, maybe it has to do with, maybe it has some deeper connection to Messmer. But if it's something that, like, D's, the two D's are supposed to have always, like, worn or shared or whatever, since before they became tarnished and came to the Lands Between, then I think it's probably just its own thing. That has absolutely nothing to do with, what snakes mean in the Lands Between. Outside of Elden Ring, they still own Sekiro, just saying. I mean, they could. They always could do another sequel to that. I mean, the problem is that there are so many games that From Software can do, but it takes them so long to develop these games. Like, they have, like, I think, what, like 4 or 5 projects they juggle at the same time? And it still could take them, like, years to come out with a game. Still need to finish AC6. Do it! Do it! The new Game Plus stuff is especially neat. These might not be tarnished, though. I mean, they're at the round table hold. I'm pretty sure that's a good indicator that they're among the tarnished. Be a real man and say we need Kingsfield 5? Never. I'm never going to say that I am. Anyway, so yeah, I think the plotline's going to basically follow along those parameters, and then a lot of the stories with NPCs are probably going to be very specific. We might get some, like, bigger quests related to Carian stuff, depending on who the NPC in the Carian church is, but I think most of them are going to be very personal stories, as is typical with FromSoft. And then I think after all that, we're probably going to complete the DLC, maybe have a few additional, like, side quests or bosses that we can handle, and that'll be it. It'll be its own little self-contained story that we'll get to enjoy. I like how there have been a couple of years in past when FromSoft released 6 games in a year. Yeah, it's crazy to think of their old output. But honestly, to be fair, games have gotten so much more complicated, especially with new standards for graphics and stuff. And while From Software are never like the cutting edge on graphical fidelity, they do care about like pushing themselves and their artistic capabilities and the technology that they use. So I definitely do see them continually taking longer and longer to come out with different games, and that it's going to be more about how they stagger it, so that way it doesn't feel like it's that long, right? So it's like, okay, we're going to have a game come out in 2 years, and then another game in another 2 years, and then maybe another game in another 2 years, right? Try to set things up so that way they have a certain schedule they can follow, at least loosely. Loki just wants to wrap up the DLC stream, but we just yapping about different things, lol. Yeah, stop having good questions or commentary for me to respond to. Let me end it! And then you can complete the game. Yeah, then I can complete the game. I'm gonna do the DLC storyline, be like, ah, man, I could have completed the whole game and nothing would have changed. And then proceed to be like, whatever. At least I got my meme. Miyazaki said they want to shrink the windows between releases. That's good. I actually don't remember him saying that, so. Good to hear that is the plan. Although with the DLC being created for more than 2 years, who knows to what extent they met this goal. If the DLC is considered its own separate release almost, then yeah, sure, maybe. But I would prefer that they don't factor DLC into that equation in the future. I'm going to let them slide just because Elden Ring is such a big game. It's such a new project for them that probably creating a giant, you know, new expansion pack, essentially, for their open world was probably a huge effort still. Finally, Loki finishing Elden Ring after 2 years. Finally gonna have my first playthrough beaten. I can't wait to finally marry, well, Marika, I guess. Watch all this time spent going through all the different endings and stuff, and in the end, I still just pick the default ending. Just use my 2 runes and be done with it. Are these Gmir coffins bigger than the usual coffins? Not that I could tell. They look to be the same size, but I haven't done a direct comparison. What's up with the random chairs in the wilderness? Because people like to sit out. They like to enjoy the fresh air, but they don't want to stand all day. And they don't want to sit their butts on the rock and dirt. So they bring out their chairs. There. The more you know. Hey, Loki and gang, what's up? Hey, Stefanos! Welcome! You came just in time for me to end the stream. Yeah, guys, so I would love to continue chatting with you all, but it's already been, like, what, 2 hours? I kind of have other things I need to do. I think it's great that you guys have subscribed to me. I'm going to try to pump out more content for you guys so you'll be able to feel like your sub is actually worth something. Lol. Again, thanks everybody for coming on in to chat. I saw a lot of new people here. Great to see you. DLC hype stream, let's go. Yeah, but you're a little late. No. Pick the gold mask ending. To reject Fia cheating on you and the DLC reveal that Ranni has 5 kids. Yeah. Go for the incel ending. It's all gold mask from here. I just need to dedicate myself purely to monastic service. Yeah, alright, so, yeah, time sure does fly. But yeah, okay, we're gonna end things here, guys. Thank you so much for coming on in. I'm looking forward to seeing what how all our theories pan out when it comes to the DLC. How things are gonna play out. I'm gonna still do my Elden Ring streams, though they may not be as frequent up until the DLC releases. I guess we'll see. Maybe I'll do a few Let's Play streams for some of the optional bosses, but again, we'll see. And until next time...